One of the things on here was preventing base camping. We earlier talked about, bases with pre-built structure so that you couldn't get all your structures destroyed. You had some places to go hide, and whether it's on Epigee or any of the maps on Echo, there's some really cool structures there. But one of the other things that I want to mention, and there wasn't actually specifically a question on this, was something that we ended up changing for zones mode. We didn't make one modification to it, however. And this was to help protect getting ravaged at your base over and over again. In Warhawk, if you remember, you had all the bases that you could go capture, and then your zones would grow and you get link bonuses and all that stuff. It was one of my favorite modes. But if you were getting rolled, which sometimes you did if you didn't have a good strategy, your team sucked or whatever, you'd lose all your territory and you were back at your home base. You could never lose your home base. So you're pretty much condemned to just sit in your home base and pretty much take it over and over again. And that was something that really got changed. So we have this concept of this world victory now. So there are no pre-locked home bases and zones. You both have a starting base, but again, with Build and Battle, you can be exploring out and conquering new areas and building extractors or shrines if you're on the Outcast team, building up a new base, and the base that you started with at the beginning of the game might get overrun by the enemy. If you're playing a game and you just get brutally worked over by the enemy team, they can destroy all your territories. Well, your team wasn't very good. They get the world victory. You at least get the mercy kill. You don't have to wait for the next 10 minutes and just get rolled over and over again in your base. And while that seems like a weird thing to protect against base camping, that is an important thing from an experiential perspective. And so I think that change to zones was really important. I'm glad Josh kept fighting for that. Let's see, turret spam. This was something we saw a lot of at the end of the beta when we got a lot of new players into the game. Auto turrets are small turrets. They're most successful against ground troops, and we saw lots of players just spend almost their entire team's structure limit on auto turrets. We love the auto turrets. They're very effective. They play a great role in the game, but there were a couple changes that the designers made to the economy that I think make a huge difference on the turrets. First of which, they're not as cheap as they once were. We change the prices all the time. I think right now they're 3 cells of Rift Energy. But more importantly, they are far easier to take out with weapons now. So some of you guys that are watching this video and played at the end of the 1.3 beta know what it was like to try to get into a base that had 20 auto turrets all over the place. Now they're able to be brought down way easier. They're still effective, they're still good items, they still fill the role in the Build and Battle roster, but attacking players can cut them down way more easily. So they cost a little bit more and they're a little bit easier to take out, and the team feels pretty good about those changes. Okay, here's another one. I'm sure this is going to be a sensitive one. I'm sure there'll be comments about this. Why no vehicle health bar? In fact, we don't actually have a health bar in the game at all, whether you're in a troop or whether you're in a vehicle. And this was intentional. We knew we were going to have Build and Battle HUD. We knew we were going to be throwing some other HUD elements at the game. We were nervous about having even more HUD, and we wanted to try making the player understand where their health was without having kind of the old school gamey bar or the ring or games displayed a bunch of different ways. I know there was some ambiguity among some players, but once you kind of get the feel of the sounds and the look of all the visuals, I mean, they're very clear steps. I think you've got sparks at the 50% level and fire at the 75%. You kind of use that to gauge for your health bar. And we feel good about that. That's one less kind of gamey thing stuck on the screen. We do think that once you've played it a bit, you do kind of get into the zone and you pick up on those state changes. And we think it's still a very successful way of understanding what the health of the vehicle is. And the same with the troop too. You've got your directional take hit indicators, and then when you're real low health, you've got the overlay and all of that. So we feel pretty good about where we're at there. But I'm sure if you guys still continue to don't, you'll tell us. Lastly, this was one of the things that we added in the 1.3 beta. And it was loadouts. This is something we're really happy with in the game. Build and Battle gives Starhawk players a ton of flexibility because you can build your layout how you want. You can make your base over here or there. You can play with these vehicles or that vehicle. And when we rolled out loadouts in the 1.3 beta, we had this concept of strategic and blitz loadouts. That was done very intentionally. We knew that there were some players that just wanted to get immediately into the game. They wanted a ton of Rift energy to start with. They wanted a base that was pre-built. They just wanted to jump in, wham bam, thank you ma'am, and get combat going. But then there was another group of players that liked a little bit more of the progression through the units. And so both of those loadout types speak to slightly different game experiences. And I think that's what's cool about Starhawk, is that it's kind of this super mega shooter toy box. You can do so many different things with it and play it in so many different ways. And so one of the comments here is we really need more loadout options. And so I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about the additional loadout options. We still have the difference between the blitz loadouts and the strategic loadouts, so that you've got pre-built bases, more starting Rift energy. But we actually have 10 loadout structures in the game, some of which, like Lone Wolf, that has vehicles that are primarily just for a single player. So the Hawk, a jetpack, the jet bike. Then you've got other sets which are like air superiority, the Hawk and jetpack. So like, let's say you're a player and you don't want all the crazy brutal pilots in your game rolling you all the time. You can run with a ground pounder loadout and not have Hawks in your game at all. You can just all be ground vehicles, no jetpacks or anything like that. And so there's a bunch of different versions of the different types, plus strategic and blitz. It gives players a bunch of options. So when you create your server, you can set up your rotation in a bunch of different ways. And the other thing I wanted to mention is that we've got our deathmatch dogfight mode. So for those players who just want to get their raw space combat on, have crazy dogfights, you can set those up. We didn't have that enabled for you guys in the beta. You can set up a rotation and just do deathmatch dogfights over and over again. You just want to do 8-player free-for-all dogfights for 2 hours. You can totally configure the servers to do that, and that's awesome. I love dogfighting. As always, I've said this probably on every card now, with everything that I've talked about, whether it's these 14 questions or the 1,400 questions that you guys are going to raise after we launch, we're always going to be listening, and we make quick updates based on the stuff that you give feedback on. We don't always agree with the feedback, but when we do, we look at the data and we make quick change. So we ran the beta for a long time, but on May 8th, it's going to feel like a completely new and fresh game. So I think that's it for the 14 items. I can't wait to answer even more questions in the days and weeks to come.
PlayStation